Hello, 11A. Okay, so now that you have all completed your two descriptions, we're going to review what an ideal description would look like in comparison to what you've actually written. So this is very important just to see about areas that you may have not looked at or improved. So what we're going to do today are three things. Number one, I'll just go through this document that you see in front of you and explain what you need to do with that. Number two, I'm going to explain the assessment that we're going to be having not next week, but the following week. And number three, I will introduce you to the vocabulary. There's actually not a lot of vocabulary that I could see that you'd have problems with, but I'm going to introduce you to that vocabulary. I will also let you know that we're going to be having two mock assessments to make sure that you know how to do these descriptions correctly before we do the assessment itself. Okay, so as I said, please take this really seriously. It's really important, and it does go through 20% of your final assessment. So the first one, you can see here, milk is an important staple, etc., etc. So this is an example of what you probably should have written for yours. So it comes to 144 words. What I want you to do after this recording for the rest of the class, for your work time, is to actually get your description, get this description, and compare the two of them. So I want you to think, what could you do to improve in your summary? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, you're probably going to have 3, 4, 5. Have a look at how you could improve your summary and compare those two. And all you have to do is exactly the same thing with the second part, okay? This is the one for T. All right, so is there anything that you missed out? Are their sentences longer? Are they using compound words? Have they used different signposting phrases? And see what you could implement in yours. So that should hopefully probably take you about 10-15 minutes to compare both of those. Yeah, so that's all you have to do with that, nice and easy. Like I said, the more that you look at strong performances or strong work, and if you can emulate that, or if you can copy that structure, then that's going to definitely help you. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at is the assessment. Okay, so this assessment I have scheduled for the week after next. Okay, so that'll give you enough time to learn the vocabulary and for us to keep practicing. As I said before, if you get your homework to me on time, I'll have more opportunity to review, make changes or suggestions and send it back to you so that you can get the highest mark possible. So what we're going to go through now is all of the information about the description in preparation for the assessment, and that will also give you an opportunity to consider what you need to do for the mock tests. As I said, we're going to be doing two that are going to be based on a process, and because we've looked at the graph already, so we're focusing on the process, and those are the mock assessments that we're going to do. All right. So instructions to students, that being you. You are required to write a description of a process and a graph. Okay, so there's two things that we're going to be doing in this. In addition to these instructions, your teacher will provide you with the assessment criteria, so we're going to look at that to ensure that you understand. So the more time that you look at what you need to do to get the highest mark, you're not flying blind. You know that if I do this and this and this, I know that I'm going to get that 75, 85% that I'm hoping for. Tasking unit for Prepare You, so that's what we're doing at the moment. It is a closed book test, and there will be someone in there with you observing you during this test. So the assessment event is made up of two tasks. Task 1, you are required to write an approximately 225 word description of a process, demonstrating the ability to use conventions and language of technical process writing, including the use of passive voice. Now remember in the last class that we did, it talked about using passive voice, so there's no association with the item itself. And the ability to write complex sentences and clear paragraphs. I'll go into a bit more detail about that in a moment, but they are expecting you to be able to write an introduction and a conclusion with the process being in the middle. Task 2, you are required to write an approximately 150-word description of a graph, demonstrating the ability to use conventions of language, of describing data display in graphical format, and the ability to write complex sentences and clear paragraphs. Okay. So there's 2 tasks. Now, for both of those tasks, you have 1 hour to complete that test. At the end of the test, you need to submit your written description test cover, which we're going to have a look at in a moment, the written description and any notes that you've made. Okay, so any notes that you've made. And I will mark the assessment event using the assessment criteria, which is exactly what we're going to have a look at in a moment, so that you know, if you were marking it yourself, you can kind of work out, okay, well, I kind of know what level mark I'd get. Okay. So here is the assessment criteria. Now, along with this class, I am going to send this information for you so you can read through it personally. You can contact me if you're not 100% sure about any of the terminology, or if you want more of an explanation about any of the areas. So for task achievement means your overall achievement. So it's kind of what I will do is I will be marking content, organisation, sentence structure and vocabulary first. And if you primarily get a 3 to 3.5, I then need to make a decision as to whether for task achievement you're adequate, very good or outstanding. Okay, so this is kind of the last thing. This is my overall perspective of what you've done. So outstanding, number 5, which is what you want, full realization of task set. Okay, so you know that you've done the right length, that you understood what the task was, that you've asked answered the questions, that you've communicated well, really that you've shown care and interest in what you're actually doing. Otherwise it's very good, then it goes adequate. Adequate is kind of in the middle. Then we look down at content. Content is what you've actually written in it. So have you explained what the process is from A through to Z? If you're talking about making ice cream, did you forget the freezing bit, which means that you haven't finished the entire process? So when it's a process, we need step by step. If we're talking about the graph, have you made sure that you've given an overarching view? What is the purpose of this graph overall? Second of all, what can we learn about from this graph? What information does it tell us about desalination or about, oh, sorry, I've said something from the assessment, about this or about that. So I can see that you've got interpretation skills. And is there a conclusion? Have you gone, and therefore we understand this? Organisation. So before you do any assessment, as you know, if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. So it's really important that you quickly on your scratch paper that you write down, okay, so my introduction, I'm going to say, you know, this about this entire item. If it's about global warming is a huge issue that we're currently facing, okay? Sorry, just getting messages on my phone. I'm going to put that away. Then we've got, so outstanding, very good or adequate. So a very good range, a very good organised. So I can see that, yes, you've got the introduction, then you've told me what happens first, second, third, fourth. You've put things in a logical order. If you're talking about the graph, that you've actually put the explanation of the graph from something that's big through to something that's small. Okay, so we start from big and then we look at small when we're doing our interpretation. Sentence structure, I'm looking at grammar, I'm looking at your vocabulary, sorry, your grammar, I'm looking at your spelling, I'm looking at that I can clearly see this is an introduction, this is a paragraph, this is a paragraph, and this is a conclusion. Are there commas in the right place? Have you got full stops? Have you got the right capital letters at the right time? Okay, so your sentence structure. And we're looking at compound sentences, okay? So not just short, brief, repetitive sentences, but compound, complex sentences. And then finally, vocabulary. So this is not just knowing the technical vocabulary, which we're going to look at in just a moment. It's actually looking at your vocabulary that you used. Instead of going next, you might say furthermore, or instead of saying and then this happens, you would say consequently. Okay, so using higher vocabulary words are going to increase your mark as well. So take a look at this, especially once we've done our mock next week. I'd like you to see what you would mark yourself, okay? And if you feel that you fall down in any area, you can either, if it were me, I would rewrite it and submit it to me again to see if you can get a better mark, and it just makes sure that you're prepared for that assessment, okay? So these are just some little notes that the teachers give, but I just wanted to give it to you so you understand exactly what it's talking about. Or exactly how I'm going to be marking you. So task achievement requires the inclusion of a clear thesis statement which tells the reader how you're going to interpret the topic. So a clear thesis statement might be, for instance, if you're talking about global warming is an issue that needs to be considered, analysed, and a resolution put. So I know, oh, okay, so this is what we're going to look at it from this perspective. The content of the essay supports the thesis statement and fully answers all parts of the question, okay? So making sure that you're answering every criteria in the assessment. The content includes appropriate main topic ideas, substantiated by relevant supporting ideas or examples. So if they say next it is desalinated, what does that mean? Give a bit more of an explanation. Organisation. You can see here, it includes evidence of planning. If I see that planning, that's going to be good. It's going to be a positive for you because I can see that you've worked out, okay, what kind of structure do I need for this? Sentence structure, complex, compound sentences, grammar, accuracy, and punctuation. And vocab selection, so include selection and appropriate use of a range of words, okay? And down here you can see plagiarism. Let's not do that. No copy, no plagiarism, no using word for word from the information that you're provided. I need to see that you've got the summarising and paraphrasing skills that we did in semester 1, okay? Right, so this is going to be your description marking sheet. So you're going to get a copy of this when I send the assessment through the week after next. And this shows you exactly what I'm going to be marking you on. You can see 25%, sorry, 20, a mark out of 25, a mark out of 25 for each. And that will result in 50 and becomes part of your 20%, okay? So you can see exactly what I'm going to do. You can interpret the information and you know what's going to happen in the assessment. Good. So the final thing that I wanted to show you before you do some work today is just the vocabulary sheet, and hopefully your wonderful support teacher today will have printed these off for you. If not, if you can organise to print them off. Now it's exactly the same 1, 2, 3, 4. I've just done this to save paper so that when you print it, you guys can just cut this little bit out, and each of you just have a small slip. As you can see, there's not a lot. Desalination, filter, reverse osmosis, turbine, generate, landfill, power plant, and pH levels. So from that, you probably can get a bit of an idea about what the process is going to be talking about. And one of the graphs are actually very similar, so they fall into kind of that same area. So you've got an idea about what the topic's going to be. So what I'd like you to do is write down the meaning and write in your own sentence, okay? And by the end of this class, or by the end of this week, I'd like you to have completed this and send it to me. I don't want to see everybody having the same sentence. I want you to write it in your own words, your own individual sentence. This is not group work, okay? You're going to have to learn this because we are going to have a vocabulary test either later this week or next week to make sure that you know these words. I don't want you going into the exam not having any idea about the vocabulary, because then your description is simply not going to make any sense. Good. So the things that you need to do today is go through this, make sure that you complete that. And as I said, please also, also please review these, okay? Compare yours to what the professionals suggest. See what you're missing. Have you got strong compound words? How could you improve your own? In the next class, there's going to be 30 minutes for you to actually do a mock description. I'll get the feedback from that, and then we're going to do a second mock description assessment. Okay, as usual, I'm on WeChat. Please communicate directly through me on WeChat. I'm getting a lot of silence at the moment, so I'd really like to hear from everybody to make sure everybody is participating and learning. That's all for today. Thank you very much. Please get all of that work to me, and I will see you in the next class.